How will the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune on February 20th affect Donald Trump? Does it spell doom for him? Let's take a look. Welcome to Trevor's Tarot, Astrology, and Spirituality. First off, a huge thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel. Thank you for liking and watching and commenting on the videos. Hitting that thumbs up button and leaving a comment of more than 7 words really does help the algorithm. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you're not subscribed but you listen to the videos, it doesn't cost you anything and it helps the channel grow. I greatly appreciate it. The devil card popping out, I think, is significant. So how will the Saturn-Neptune conjunction affect Donald Trump? There's a couple reasons why I want to look at this. The conjunction is happening at 0 degrees of Aries. Everybody's talking about this. You know, it's never happened in recorded history, the start of the zodiac. I actually just want to look at the parallels to the last 2 times Saturn conjuncted Neptune. In 1989, we had the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Tiananmen Square massacre, arguably the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the USSR. And really what that was people either challenging rigid ideology or rigid ideology no longer being able to serve the people in a way that was sustainable for the ideology. Sounds kind of familiar. And then if we go to 1951, 1952, we have the death of Joseph Stalin. And there's a lot of parallels between Stalin and Trump on just a personality level. You know, Stalin was very ill towards the end. He had had a stroke. They kept it from the media. The media would report on this. He would blame the media, say they were being run by elites. And he was very anti-Semitic about it, actually, which isn't terribly unparalleled from the felon either, or Donald Trump. And he subscribed to a really rigid ideology that you either had to be a part of or you were going to be opposed by him. So, and if you're a Republican in the United States, if you don't subscribe to the Trump's ideology, you're kind of banished from the party, or they'll primary you, with a few exceptions, but not many. So I want to start by asking just how will this affect him in general? And then we'll look at his health. Because there's just this feeling that, you know, there's a point in February where it feels like he goes silent. I don't know how else to explain it. I'm not saying that he's necessarily going to pass in February. And, you know, these conjunctions, the energy, I think, is going to stay for a year, right? So let's take a look. So how will this affect Donald Trump? Let's start with that. Okay. All right. The Eight of Pentacles, you know, they're switching plans, right? It's like if one plan doesn't work, start another. The apprentice becoming the master, so to speak, but really still the apprentice, and no pun intended there. So things aren't going as planned. I think that's fair to say if you're on the inside or if you're on the outside looking in. Things are not going as planned for him the way they think. The Hierophant, the church, the Pope, the courts. The courts are going against him. The Pope's speaking out against him. Again, there's all this opposition that's coming from consequences of his actions, not from anything else. They're just reactions to his actions. The King of Cups is my card for the Democrats. We'll see what that means in just a second. The Ten of Pentacles. This is one of my cards. I'm sorry, the Ten of Cups. This is one of my cards for the Epstein files because there's so few cards that actually depict young people in them. So, you know, we have that going on as well. And I've always thought that eventually the heightened stress is kind of what does him in. Because his body is just not going to be capable of handling stress. And he's not capable of handling stress. And, you know, he tweeted out some very racist thing about the Obamas this morning. You know, he's losing control. Like, yes, he's always been racist. That part's true. I guess I should preface this with this is a tarot reading for entertainment purposes only, so I don't get myself into trouble. But, you know, yelling at Caitlin Collins, this lashing out at the media, it's very Stalin-esque. Bombshells and surprises at the center of the reading. I think this is going to affect him in ways that people don't really think about. I think we're in for a wild ride. I think we'll be fine, by the way. I know it's exhausting and I know it's stressful and all that, but I really do think at the end of the day, we're going to be fine. The Ace of Pentacles, a new reality around money. I think the American people have already concluded that he's not good for the economy. And this is the first time this has happened since he's been in the scene. Even when things were going terrible in COVID, people still said he was good for the economy. I don't understand it, but that's what they said. The Page of Pentacles, messages coming forward about his health. We're getting them every once in a while, right? The chronic venous insufficiency, the sudden announcement that he had an MRI, you know, the bruising on his hands. And, you know, if you don't accept the definition of it's from shaking hands or hitting a desk, you know, then you're part of this elite cabal against him, when in fact the opposite is true. He's part of the elite cabal, right? So, again, there's just a lot of parallels here. The Queen of Swords, logic and consistency. It's not him that's changed. It's people's reaction to him. And that's significant to point out because, you know, Saturday Night Live did this kind of funny sketch of the mom making a confession that she was a Trump supporter, and now she's confessing to her kids that, you know, oh, you know, he's really probably bad for the country. People are coming to this conclusion. And not because anything has changed within him, but just because people are starting to realize that if he actually can do the things that he says, things are really bad. And the Nine of Pentacles, having everything that he needs, but not things that he wants. And that's the problem. There is no satisfying him, right? It's like, you know, if we were to use a food analogy, he would never get full, right? He'd always want more power, more this, more that. Similar to Stalin. So they're having to try new things because the things that they're working just aren't resonating well with the American public. Everybody's kind of shocked and surprised by what's going on with him, with his health, with the things that he's doing inside the government, the crazy announcements like, oh, we're going to take away tax-exempt status from churches that say bad things about me. You know, just crazy stuff. And again, he's never going to be satisfied. So expect him to grow more irritable, I guess is my conclusion here. You know, I think we'll get messages about his health. I think they'll be quite surprising. And I do think that Democrats will keep pushing for answers here. I wouldn't be surprised if Pope Leo says more things about him, in particular around Epstein and the poor, and pointing out that he's really just doing what he's saying. I mean, that's what's happened, and people are realizing that you know what? Guess we didn't really want that after all. And so there's this big, dissatisfaction in the country that goes beyond politics, because it's not even about politics. It's about human decency, right? Even the way they're treating Mark Kelly, for example, with, saying he doesn't have the right to say certain things, and so we're going to take away his military pension. These are things that people just don't like. They don't work. So, his health is failing, the Five of Pentacles. And it's sort of like this time is destined, the Wheel of Fortune. And it's destined to start things anew, the Fool card. So it really does feel like this is a very important time period that we're going through in the next few weeks. So, how much of a parallel we can draw with Stalin on the health and the media, I think that part's pretty clear. Does this actually foretell doom, as it did for Stalin when Saturn conjuncted Neptune in I believe it was 1952. I might have that wrong, but 51 or 52, somewhere in that range. Okay, so how's this going to affect Donald Trump's health? How does this Saturn-Neptune conjunction affect Donald Trump's health? I think, astrologically, there's just so much things going on here in February. There's so many planets on one side of the zodiac, and new leadership, Ace of Wands. Does this mean he's gone? I think it means either he's gone or the way he governs changes. And the only way I could see the way he governs changing is if he's being told what to do by different people than the ones that may be telling him now. Most likely, I think this just means that he's gone. But we have to understand that a Saturn-Neptune conjunction is once every 36 years approximately. So that energy is going to stick with us for, at least 6 months to a year. So we might not see the effects of it right away. It's not like Stalin died on the day they were conjunct. It just was in the time period. It's not like the Berlin Wall fell on the day they were conjunct. It was just close to it. So astrology doesn't really do very well with exact dates. It just kind of gives a time frame. The Queen of Pentacles bringing about questions of his stability and justice. This is interesting, the Justice card. So if you watch my other channel, Scrying Out Loud, you know that I've said for a long time that there's something very karmic about the way he goes, about the way he exits the world. And I think the karmic part is that he realizes the world doesn't like him. Like, it's like the narcissist that has the sudden realization and then dies. The sudden realization of, you know what, I'm not the smartest, I'm not the greatest, and people don't even like me. There's something very karmic about that. There's something very karmic going on in February in general with, rich and powerful people being exposed in the Epstein files. And, he's not the only politician that's under pressure, right? The UK Prime Minister's under pressure as well. And others, the former Norwegian Prime Minister, for example. So this is kind of, affecting a lot of the same archetypal type people, the people in power, the elites, if you want. The Six of Pentacles, this is our card for Epstein, or one of them. The Six of the Six of Cups and the Ten of Cups are the two, and sometimes the Chariot card, depending upon what we're talking about. But I think this is really negatively affecting his health. This is part of that karma of people realizing that, you know what, he's a terrible person. Forget his politics. He's a terrible person. And, you know, his politics are creating the uproar in the U.S., the uprising, if you want. I mean, there's protests every day outside of detention centers in Minneapolis and even in Portland, Maine. And, you know, there's protests all over the United States every single day because of him. And this is new. This feels very parallel to some of the events from 1989. There's a lot of anxiety for him. He's very nervous. And I've said this a number of times that he's scared to die. I don't know why. You know, some people are, some people aren't, but he's like petrified of it. I can feel it. It's palpable that he's just very frightened of death. So and he's, of course, never sleeps well. That's why we get the crazy tweets. The Queen of Cups, the lack of empathy. You know, people don't care that he's sick. In fact, people feel a little bit relieved that he's less able to do certain things, right? So I think that's part of it too. The truth is going to come out. And I think while that might not necessarily seem like it affects his health directly, indirectly it does, because it increases the stress levels, increases that cortisol, increases, you know, things involving his heart, which is the way I think he'll probably go with a stroke, something along those lines. And so I just think there's a lot of parallels here. I think he's very isolated. He's very alone. You know, people don't want to be around him, you know, for a variety of reasons, because he's a horrible person, because he smells, you know, whatever the reason. And he's isolated the United States as well. So I think the Hermit's here for a number of reasons. But I think as far as his health goes, the Hermit is here because he can't really talk about it. Because if he says he's sick, then he thinks people don't see him as strong. And if he's not seen as strong, that loses his identity. And that's why this is going to be karmic, because the truth is we already don't see him as strong. We see him as weak and helpless and sick. And as a consequence, we realize that these more and more irrational actions are just distractions from things like Epstein and his health. And it's frightening. And so people are rising up, people are protesting. It just all seems awfully parallel to a lot of the other Saturn-Neptune conjunctions. Things are going to happen quickly. He goes down fast. He's not sick for a long time. It's like boom, dead. This is the way I've always seen it. I think that's the way it goes. So what does the conjunction mean? It means new leadership. He has a lot of anxiety, and he goes rather quickly when it comes. There's not going to be much of a warning. The truth coming out affects his health, causes him a lot of anxiety, and that's the karmic part about it. That's why it's going to create a shift where we don't trust people that lie about things, even if they seem irrelevant to the office that they're running for. He's not stable. The Epstein stuff's making him lash out. He feels quite isolated and alone. And, you know, people don't have any empathy for him. They just don't. And that, in turn, makes him feel unimportant. Again, I think Epstein is a big driver here, the Chariot card. I think just use your own judgment here. Use your own discernment. You can see that he's quite ill. So we'll have to see how this exactly plays out, but I do think that there's a lot here that we shouldn't ignore. I think it's important, and I think that you know, perhaps the Saturn-Neptune conjunction really is the big kind of astrological event that spells out his future, which is leaving the planet. So, all right, thank you for watching. I'll be back with another video soon.